I'm going to give you a piece of news here. Things today are not as they were maybe 40 or 50 years ago. I know you are shocked. Well, when you talk about game development, the way that game development happens, and of course the time overall that it takes to make the average video game, we can definitely see that that is the case. We can look at this chart right here and we can see that, oh my god, the average time that it has taken to make a video game just has drastically gone up over the past like 4 or 5 decades. Hopefully you can see this pretty good here, but the x-axis is the year, so it starts with 1979, I guess, when video games were born, and the y-axis is how many days on average it takes to make a video game that year. And you can see all the way back in 1979, 1981, it took like 90 days. It took 3 months to make an average game, whereas you go up all the way to the right there, 2024, it takes an average of like 5 years just to make a game. Insane stuff. This has just gone nothing but up since the birth of video games, but it kind of sounds like, with a lot of different factors, mainly with kind of the not very good economic side of things of being a game developer and a game publisher these days, maybe it's because of that this trend is actually for the very first time going to really start going down. I've kind of thought this for quite some time now, maybe call it confirmation bias, whatever, but it was this article that I saw from gamesindustry.biz that really made me feel this is the case. There was a journalist that actually went to Gamescom, and they say that it really feels like the industry now has a plan, and that is to make games quicker, and at least part of that plan involves AI. So this is by Lewis Packwood. This was just written a couple days ago, right off of Gamescom coming to an end. I think today's actually the last day it's going on. It's basically like the modern day E3. And so our buddy Lewis here, he was at Gamescom, and he kind of had the inside pass to talk with a lot of these game developers and CEOs. He says in the second paragraph there that the business-only section of the show, that's where he was at, was where he had spent the past 4 days dashing between appointments with CEOs and developers, and he says there is one sentiment that has remained consistent among almost everyone that he spoke to, and that is that they say we need to make games quicker. And I think this absolutely makes sense from an economic standpoint. Or maybe not even economic, just from a profit standpoint. I mean, if it takes you an average of 5 years to make a game, but if your game, I don't know, breaks even at best, or even just doesn't make as much as what it took to develop the game, you have got quite a big problem on your hands. Now, how are you going to do this? How are you actually going to decrease game development times? Obviously easier said than done. He said like you could make games look not as good, like the graphics could just be like really bad, the development overall could be bad, but that's obviously not really likely. That's not really realistic overall. I mean, I've said this in the past that with stuff like this, you're really going to have indie games, like 2D, kind of lower effort development games. You're really going to have those really shine and really come out, they're like the pixel games. But obviously there's still going to be a market for games that look really realistic, really good, and take up all of those resources. So he says, what is the alternative? Well, you probably could have guessed this, but it kind of sounds like the overall sentiment is AI. Whether you like that or you hate that, it really sounds like that is kind of the key here to bring down these development costs. It's not just something that Lewis thinks or that I think, it's something that these game developers all think. That's what he says. He says it's an option that more and more studios are now taking up. There's 2 main reasons that people really hate AI. One of those is kind of like an ethical reason, people don't want it to take jobs from artists, and that is quite a good point. I really can't say much about that, but the other reason is that they don't want it to take away from like the creativity side of things when it comes to games or even like music, stuff like that. But I've always thought that no, AI isn't going to probably really go into the creative side of things. It's probably just going to do the nitty-gritty stuff that's going to take like a lot longer to have an actual human do. I'm talking stuff like coding, and that is what these developers agreed on. They said that everyone was adamant that AI should be used as a helper tool rather than as a replacement for human skills. Don't get me wrong, I'm sure that there are some people who are going to use AI for the creative side of things. Sure, it won't be long until we get our first game whose script was written by AI, if we haven't already, but if you go back to this chart that I showed at the start here, I do want to point out that there are certain moments that you do see like a crazy dip in the development times, and I don't really really know why that is. But if you can kind of look a little closely, hopefully you can see it. From 1988 to 89, huge dip, but then it went right back up. Same thing from 98 to 2000, and then it went up. Then you had a bunch of random years, like from 03 to 04 there was a dip, 05 to 06, 07 to 08, 09 to 10. I have to wonder, there's got to be reasons overall why these dips occurred, and so the reason I'm bringing all this up is that I have to wonder on the very right side there, as we get into not just 2025, but like 2028, 2029, is this just going to be like a 1 year, 2 year dip because of AI, or is AI going to completely transform this chart? Is 2024, or maybe when we come out with 2025 and 2026, is that going to be the absolute peak? Now with AI, I actually think as a sort of helper here, I think that that tool, like it or not, as I said, it's something that is actually going to bring development time down. Something that it sounds like many developers, pretty much every developer agrees, actually does need to go down now more than ever.